Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and I am so delighted to have Lisa Campion join us today. Lisa is the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Art of Psychic Reiki, and the upcoming book, Energy Healing for Empaths. Lisa Campion is a psychic counselor and Reiki master teacher with over 25 years of experience. She's been teaching Reiki for over 20 years. She's trained more than 1,000 people in Reiki and has conducted more than 15,000 individual sessions. She's also the host of the radio show and podcast, The Miracle of Healing, on Empower Radio. Lisa specializes in training emerging psychics, empaths, and healers so that they can fully step into their gifts, since the world needs all the healers that it can get. Lisa, it's so great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm super happy to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast, by the way. I love it.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
What's your favorite episode?
I kind of like the hacking episodes, like the ones where you really get like biohacking and life hacking. And, I can tell that you've spent so much time in trying to, figure out, like you said, optimize yourself. And you just provide some really great hints on how to do that. So
No,
thank you.
thank
Thank you
you.
for the work you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do love geeking out on this sort of stuff, like wearables and quantified self, and what gets measured gets managed. So
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Well, I'd love to get into Reiki and empath psychic abilities and all that sort of stuff. So let's dive in. If you could start with how you ended up knowing that you had this ability, there must be a fantastic origin story that you can share with our audience.
It's kind of a crazy origin story that, I grew up just outside Boston. I was born in the 60s, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And back then, it really wasn't cool to be psychic, like, not good, and there was no psychics on TV, no podcasts, no books in the library about what was happening. And so I really had to figure everything out myself and spent a lot of time trying to understand what I was experiencing, that I was seeing and experiencing, perceiving things that clearly other people weren't. And I spent a lot of time trying to like pretend to be normal, like just get by and not, back then, that if you saw angels and talked to dead people, you might land yourself in a psychiatric hospital, So I was like scrounging for information and trying to figure out what was happening. And fortunately for me, my parents were hippies. So they took me to transcendental meditation when I was 10, because that's what you did when you were a hippie in 1974, right? So I had this experience, I actually met Maharishi Yogi, the founder of transcendental meditation. And he was sort of, taking everyone in the back and giving people some Shaktipat, to do an initiation and give them their mantra. And he was kind of like speaking through his interpreter, and he was kind of like blah blah blah. And then he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Like, if you'd grown up in my country, we would know what to do with you, but because America's basically spiritually bankrupt, you're kind of out of luck. And you're going to have a tough childhood, but you need to hang in there because you're going to help a lot of people when you get older." And I really kind of like, I was like, okay, like it was kind of amazing that somebody saw something in me that I was experiencing. And I got a lot of my paranormal education by watching horror movies. So when I was 12, I snuck into Poltergeist to see the movie, right? And there's this um, professional psychic, and I was like, oh my god, that's the thing you can do. Like, I'm gonna do that, and I decided in the movie theater in that moment that that's what I was supposed to do. And she gave this like little tidbit about what happens when you die and why some people get stuck and what you do to cross them over. And I was like, okay, there are people who know things. And I kind of sparked my mission to figure out um, what was going on and what I was going to do. And I actually started working as a psychic when I was 19, and I haven't really done anything else except train people to do energy work and Reiki, and really now train people. So it was so painful for me to be lost at sea with no information and getting like gleaning information from horror movies, which I have to tell you is sort of 50-50 on the accuracy of whether it was actually good information, right? And it was so painful for me that I was very dedicated to helping other people that were going through that experience not have to suffer alone, like in confusion like I did. And now that's my thing, because I really think that more and more people are waking up to their sensitivity are doing practices like Reiki and yoga and meditation that pop your psychic ability open. And it's happy. And I wrote the book I wanted to find in the library that I couldn't find, and I became the teacher that I wanted to find that I couldn't find. So that's really my story,
That's
you know.
awesome,
Yeah.
and what a great lesson for us to push through the blockages and the things that seem like they're not aligned or helping us, and they're actually everything's for our highest and best good. We just have to zoom out far enough to see it.
Yeah, I think so. And it's kind of like, I'm sure the same thing happened for you, is our pain, the pain that we go through sometimes becomes like the rocket fuel for our journey and how we want to contribute in the world, and that's certainly been true for me. So I did everything the hard way and made out every mistake in the book. I started doing like house clearings in the 90s, and there was nobody doing it, no manual, no, I was always kind of ahead of the curve, so I had to figure it all out. And it was hard, but I felt like it taught me, like really deeply. And so I'm super happy to pass on you know, what I learned the hard way and make things easier for people. Because I do think as we're going through this expansion in human consciousness, more and more people's abilities are popping open. More and more people are like feeling the need, their life purpose is to be a healer, and wanting to be of service. And it's just nice, and especially young people. Like I like working with teenagers and young adults because they're so bright and so open, and there's so much more available for them than there was for me.
Yeah. So, what would be an example of something that you learned the hard way and did it wrong at first, like a house clearing that went poorly or something?
Wow, like so many. I mean, I, nobody calls you to their house to do a clearing because they have great energy in their house. Just like nobody comes to my office because they're having a good day. It's like, kind of like our job is to take our little light and step into the darkness. And I've seen things that you read about, that you see in horror movies, that really dark spirits or things that linger after bad things happen. And I took them home with me because I didn't know better. I didn't know how to protect myself, And one time I brought a friend home, and it took me like probably 10 years to get rid of that thing. Um, I actually had to
Hmm.
move because it was really dug in where I lived. And I've always been a bit of a ghost magnet anyway, so people with a lot of psychic ability, especially mediums. So mediums are psychics that specialize in talking to dead people. And anyone that has that tends to be a ghost magnet. So I could move into a brand new house and it would be haunted like 5 minutes later because they all come around. They're like, "Oh, look who's over in that house now. Like, let's move in there and see what she does."
Yeah.
So so that was the worst, was taking something home. Not good. Not
Yeah.
good. Yeah, and people do like a lot of. I think there's a lot of curiosity in the paranormal and a lot of the TV shows. Like, don't get your education by watching what they do on TV, because that's, you know, not gonna. They don't always take steps to protect themselves, or if they do, they're not showing it on camera. So it's sort of a
Hmm.
high risk psychic activity. And I think a lot of people who are curious about their paranormal do things like that, which is a little bit like not being sure you believe in sharks, so chumming the water and then jumping in to see whether sharks are real. You know,
I
that's
like that analogy.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like the spiritual equivalent of that. And I've done a lot of cleanup for people, like who've gotten themselves into really dicey spiritual experiences because they don't quite believe, so they do some things that are maybe, don't take the Ouija board to the abandoned mental hospital,
No, you're
and
right.
don't on Halloween, and no, and it seems like fun until it gets real, and then it's quickly not fun.
Yeah. So, what would be one of the worst stories that you came across of somebody that you had to work with and help?
Somebody who in a heavy metal rocker phase of their life, sweet guy, young man, but tattooed like a demon summoning sigil on his body.
Oh no.
Yeah. and was just haunted by the horrific. And he would move and it wouldn't, you know. And finally one day I was like, do you have any tattoos? Like, look. And he was like, oh yeah, look. And he's like, yeah, actually, now that you mention it, all my problems started after I got this tattoo. And he was just kind of going through like a teenage rebellion stage, and it was a powerful symbol that he had no idea.
Wow.
He had to have a tattoo removal, and like almost like to the point of like getting rebaptized and dedicating his life to the good. And I mean, I hope he's okay. Like at this point, I think he is, but that was one of the worst ones.
Yeah, I'm getting yes, he is. So, for what that's worth.
Yeah, and
Uh,
Ouija boards. The Ouija board people who sort of innocently play with them, especially psychic people who don't know
mm.
and don't have very good boundaries or are really young. Ouija boards create a lot of problems.
Yeah, because it's not filtered through divine and sacred beings. It's just you're putting your hand into murky water and hoping that good stuff's going to come out. But yeah, you don't know what's in there, and it's a lot of darkness.
A lot of like sort of takes you directly to the bad neighborhood in the astral dimension, the not so good neighborhood.
Mm.
And it's kind of a direct portal over there, and they sell it as a game in a toy store. So people don't know. It's mostly ignorance. But I embarrassed the heck out of my kids when they were teenagers. There were some kids playing with the Ouija board in the park across at the school where my kids went to
Mm.
school, and I just read them a riot act. I was like, and my kids were so mortified. Mom, we can't show our face in school tomorrow. you know. Yeah, but I felt like it was an important safety tip, and
Yeah.
worth, the lecture, even if they didn't listen to me.
Yeah, that's like worse than seeing some kids smoking crack or something in the playground.
I know. To me, it is. So I was like, danger, danger,
Yeah, it's more
and
damaging. It's
yeah,
more
it can
dangerous.
be.
It's I mean, not that I know anything about crack, but the our soul is eternal, and when you're doing stuff to your body that does have lasting impact for this physical body in this lifetime, but you mess around with the dark neighborhoods, and this could be something that you carry on for many, many lifetimes.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people like you can go on the internet now and download a demon summoning ritual, you know, and people and they do it and don't have any idea, and those things that kind of like you said, like if we if we make connections or contracts with those kinds of beings, they can and will follow us from lifetime to lifetime, and sometimes down family lineage too. So I've handled some nasty critters that have come from the up, your grandparents or your great grandparents who, it trickles down. So sort of literally the family demon. That's
Hmm.
more common than people think.
Yeah, and uh, generational curses too.
Yep, absolutely. Curses, I've been working for so long, and I keep thinking I've seen it all, and then I have to learn a whole bunch of new stuff. But I didn't really believe in curses until I started working in a town that had a lot of immigrants from South America. And somebody came in to me once and said, "I think I've got a curse." And I was like, "No, you don't." And I was like, "Oh, you do." And there was this Brazilian lady, um, that would put a curse on you for $500, and then she would take the curse off for $500. And it's kind of a good racket. And
Wow.
I know, and I was just like anybody that got into trouble in that town I lived in would get a curse, and they really can impact you quite significantly, in terms of your health or your luck in a way. Like things just kind of go wrong for you. So
Mm.
I had to become an expert in curse removal, just because
So
it
how do you
was.
tell that someone has a curse? If you just intuitively thought, "No, you don't have a curse," and then you looked into it, how did you look into it and find out that that person did?
It's always the tricky thing is to tell the difference between someone's own bad decisions, because a lot of people will come to me and say, "I think I have a curse," and I'll look at them and I'll be like, "No, you just make terrible decisions."
Hmm.
or like you like you got yourself into this mess, and I see it as like a chain. I'm a visual psychic, so I can feel it. It's more than a what a cord looks like that connects us energetically to people. It looks like a chain,
Hmm.
and it's usually wrapped around a particular part of us. Like if it's wrapped around your heart, um, then things won't go well for you. Like you could have heart problems or physical problems, or your relationships don't go well after that. And that, to
Hmm.
me, visually, it's like a chain. Sometimes like barbed wire too. And so I had to learn that, and I also had to learn quite a lot about black magic, which I also didn't really believe in very much until I started seeing just incredible numbers of cases of people who have been impacted by that. Psychic self-defense is one of my favorite topics. I guess it's like one of my specialties. So, and partly it's because it's what I've encountered it's what comes in on my clients, that I have to deal with.
Yeah. I do a lot of healings and clearings and stuff like that. Not for pay. I just do it for friends and family and um, people that I just feel called to do that for.
Mm.
And one of my mentors is Tina Zion, whom you may know. She's written some Reiki books and books about medical intuition. She's
Mm.
phenomenal. And she keeps telling me I'm not doing enough to protect my backside, that I'm showing vulnerabilities on my backside. And so I need to keep mindful of this when I'm putting protection around myself, doing the prayers and spheres of protection and so forth, where it goes all the way around
Interesting.
and not just thinking about putting a wall up or some sort
Yeah.
of boundary that protects me from the front. So that's something that I would love to hear more guidance around this whole psychic self defense thing, because I do keep getting interfered with, and
Yeah.
I don't like it, but it's kind of been something that's been par for the course as I go into this area of helping people with healings, because usually they have some sort of negative entities that are
Mhm.
associated with their physical ailment.
Yep. So often they do. It's an interesting thing you said that, because I do find this to be very common for people that have a high profile in the world. You know what I mean? So, as a public figure, that we leave ourselves open for this kind of negative mojo more than other people. So I think, as for me, as I've gained, like, wrote a couple books, they were bestsellers, all of a sudden I'm like low key, somebody people know. And what I get for you is that that's part of it too, is that we might you have to defend a little bit about jealousy, or something my friend calls the evil eye, which is like when people ill wish you because you're successful, and it's that's what I see a lot of. And so when you have that and you know about that, you're going to front load the front of your energy field, because that's where you're protected. Your forward facing self is your public self. Do you know what I mean? So you've learned
Right.
already how to kind of create a boundary or a buffer between you and the people of the world, or the public, or the people who listen to you and follow you and all of that. The back of the self is a little more about our personal self. So who's in our inner circle, who's in our private, like who's got your back literally, and like, I think you've got really good people that have your back. So I don't think that's a problem. It's more what I sense, it's more about your level of compassion for people. So
Mm.
I see like a weak spot in the back of your heart because you're super kind and you're compassionate and you care a lot. And that compassion can it's like a weak spot for you. And I'm not saying it's weak to be compassionate or that you shouldn't be, but like working on the back of your heart so that you can, I think if you're more protected, you're going to be able to help more people. Do you know what I mean? And flow your compassion even more open heartedly. That's, what I think. And the biggest, does that make sense to you, first of all?
It does, yeah,
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah, I can see like really the front of your energy field looks tight, looks like you know how to do that. Even so, I think every once in a while you want to do like a clearing. Like I see like little tiny cords. that go from you, that would be the people who follow you or listen to you, or you care about them too. Do you know what I mean? So
I
you
do.
really do. And so your attention's like, oh, I hope I'm really serving everyone that I mean to be serving in your public persona. And those little chords could be cleared. And I think if you find yourself tired or a little burned out on work, make sure you clear those like readers, followers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a little tweak you could do that I think would help you. But the best technique I have is to really bring in like a lot of light into, it's either your heart or your solar plexus or your lower belly, wherever you feel like the center of your being is. And it's kind of different for everybody. Like the center of you, will reside in a specific place in your body, and it's called like the soul seat. When you breathe light, if you pull light from the earth and light from the heavens into that space, and you really create on your inhale breath, you want to pull it in, make a big, big ball, and the exhale, blow it out all the way through you. In the front, it's going to go easy, but make sure you do it in the back. And bring that light all the way below you, under your feet. Concentrate on that spot on the back of your heart. That's better. And push it back. That's really much better. And all the way to the very edge of your energy field, so that all you're doing is radiating light through the light of your soul, through all the layers of your energy field, all the way through the back. And do you feel that? Did that help?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Feels
that's the
electric.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one that's sort of my no fail. Do it before every session, because when the full light of your soul is radiating out and there's no place it's not radiating, nothing can get in. Nothing. Nothing. No demon, no entity, nothing. Because it's like if you turn on a faucet and water's coming out of the faucet, nothing can get up the faucet,
Right.
right? So if you're radiating that light, nothing's going to get in on you. And that's my kind of go-to.
Yeah, and we are so much more powerful than these entities. So many of us are scared of these entities, and me included. And yet, if we zoom out far enough, we can see that they're like gnats in
Yeah,
comparison to us, and we can just go flick, flick,
exactly.
out of the way, and not even waste our time to focus any energy on them.
We're the strong ones in this dimension, and they are, here they live on fear. So the more afraid of them you are, the more power they have. I'm hardly ever afraid of them, even now. People are more scary. Actual people scare me more, living people, because that you never quite know, right? But with entities, spiritual beings, we're always in the power position. We have way more power here than they do.
Yeah. Tina Zion mentioned a Netflix show that was kind of dark, and she decided to turn it off. But before she did, she heard this fantastic line that relates to what you were saying about the fear and feeding on that fear. The protagonist in that show said, "I have no more fear to feed you." To
Yeah.
whatever entity or demon it was. And that is just so profound, because that is what they're looking for from us. And if
Yes.
we just unplug from all the negative news and all the dystopian, dark horror movies and science fiction movies, and we just focus on the light, it's a pretty light meal for the darkness. If we get in their way, it's like there's not much there for them, versus somebody who is tormented by what's going on in the world, and then they're just going down all these rabbit holes, learning more and more about what the the darkness is up to.
I really believe, I love that point, and I really believe that our particular dimension is 50% dark and 50% light. That's the nature of planet Earth down here, and we have a choice about where we, you know, put our energy, put our thoughts, put our feelings, put our attention. Um, and one of my mentors said, Lisa, if you stare in the dark long enough, they notice you, and something will start looking back at you. And if you choose to look into the lights, then what you get is more light. And we have to know enough. Sort of like I was a martial artist, so I spent a lot of my early life doing martial arts, mostly because I just wanted to be a Jedi Knight. It was the only way I could figure out how to do it, right?
Oh, that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, and it was really great spiritual training for me and psychic training as a youngster. But I like real martial artists aren't afraid. The real samurais and the real ninjas and the real martial arts masters, because they walk gently and softly through the world. They can go badass if they need to, you know, but they're not that way all the time. You're not always on guard. You're soft and open until you need to be, and then you are, and then you go back to being relaxed. And that's always been my stance in the psychic world, is I'm going
Yeah.
to be, you know, open and cautiously optimistic, open and optimistic until I have to throw down, and then I will.
Mm. Yeah. Speaking of this optimism, there's a lot of information I get in different ways, and one of the ways is through angel numbers. And I got multiple times yesterday 7777.
Hmm.
And then I Googled it, because the two books I have on angel numbers only go up to 999. 4-digit numbers. I got to turn to Google for. By the way, my two favorite books for angel numbers are the Angel Numbers 101 books from Doreen Virtue, and the Angel Numbers book from Kyle Gray. So I Googled 777 angel number meaning, and I got as the featured snippet the number 7777 is a message from the angels to remind you to maintain a positive outlook and be upbeat no matter what happens. Make sure to
Interesting.
keep in mind that every occurrence has both a positive and a bad aspect. Angel number 7777 encourages you to focus on the good things in life and to let go of the bad ones. And I'll tell you, this was a really tough weekend for me.
Mm.
So it's Monday now. On Saturday, I found out that the cat that I love dearly and had been feeding every day, morning and night, a stray cat, gotten really attached to over the last 6 months since we've been here in this new house. He got killed by a car,
Oh
and
no.
it's really hard. It was really hard, and my wife and I were guided to where he was, his body was, and I couldn't just leave him in the street. And he'd been there for a couple of days, or his body had been there. I mean, he's moved on, of course, but I couldn't just let his body getting run over all day long. It was so hard having to pick him up, his body up, and I found a place to get get it cremated, and yeah, that was really hard. But
Wow.
it was a good reminder for me that the physical body is not who we are. It's a suit we wear, and it's a computer that is really miraculous, and yet we you know shed it and move on, and then we get another one, and then we move on from that one, and so forth and so on. So um yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm
So
sorry you had to go through that. That's rough. And pets, the death of pets is so, like, they just get in our hearts deeper than we expect, and they die. It's an incredible heart opening experience. And
yeah, and I
my
found
sense,
out that he was a pet of mine and of my wife's in a past life, or at least
uh,
one past life. So
he came
yeah.
back for a visit. I get the sense too that he's really grateful for the care that you gave him, because I think he would have died a lot sooner if you hadn't been taking care of him. So you gave him extra time here.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I interviewed a famous pet psychic, Laura Stinchfield, and in that interview, she connected with another stray cat that I saved last year back in Israel when we were living in Israel for a time. And I just learned how to open my Akashic records. So I opened them. I asked what to do about this cat, because we would feed her once a week when we went to this part of town where network chiropractor was that we would go and see every week. And yeah, so she had a broken pelvis and dislocated foot, and she was severely dehydrated. She was in a lot of pain. She's healed now, but yeah, she would have died.
Mm.
And I was so grateful to have that guidance, to be able to hear what to do, because this was all very new for me at that time. I, this whole psychic thing has been such a wild ride for me, so different from a year and a half ago, when I was just um, just practicing the willing suspension of disbelief, but not going any further than that.
Well, that's
And
you're super psychic. So you've gone through a psychic opening of your own. How does that
yeah,
feel?
amazing.
It's
Such a gift, such an incredible gift.
mm,
And the more people I talk to, the more who say secretly how, yes, like very famous author told me, yeah, I have an archangel helping me write my books. Another very successful business lady I've known for 9 years. I told her I interviewed a lady who channels 12 archangels, and she was super interested. And I asked her, well, why? What's the curiosity? Like, I saw an angel last year. She said, what? So people keep this to themselves because they don't want
I don't want to be
the
thought
ridicule or
crazy.
the labeling and the
Yeah.
derision and all that sort of stuff. And it takes courage to put yourself out there, and um, then you get the skeptics who want you to prove it. And like, I have zero interest in offering services as a psychic or a medium or anything like that. Like, no thanks. I don't want to take your money for that. You can get coaching from me on business, and we'll delve into the biohacking and personal stuff too, if that's of interest to you. Some spiritual stuff mixed in, but I'm not going to offer um, Akashic records readings or medical intuition or mediumship as a service. Yeah, no thanks.
Well, you are still. How? I mean, I. It's rare that people, relatively rare that people will have a business like I do of being a psychic. But most people who are psychic, and that's most people as far as I can tell, use it like you do because it's an additive skill to their skill set. You're adding value. You made a commitment to connect to global consciousness, like universal consciousness, somewhere along the line. And when we connect that way, we get psychic ability as a byproduct of spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So you've been on a spiritual growth path. That's why yoga, Reiki, and meditation are the three big psychic openers. So what I see all the time is people who take yoga teacher training or work a lot with Dr. Joe, or start meditating, take Reiki classes, and boom, their abilities just pop open. They have like a sudden psychic opening or a precipitous psychic opening, sort of like you did. And I think, well, that's great because it's going to add to whatever you're doing. It's going to help your clients, even if it could greatly help your business clients, even if you never say any psychic stuff, because you're going to know what to do, what to say, where they're at, how to help them. It just opens up a whole nother level of gifts and skills that you can provide for people. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, I'll get an intuitive hit to introduce a client or even just a guest from my podcast to a particular practitioner, and then they'll come back and say, "Oh my goodness, that's changed my life. Thank you so much for that
Mm,
referral."
yeah,
It's really cool. It's really cool. It's
cool.
all so magical, and it just floors me. It blows my mind to think that nothing in this world is random. Nothing.
Right.
Whether we play the lottery and win or lose, whether we stub our toe, whether we get some bad news about our business or a friendship or whatever like that out of the blue, all of this is just orchestrated. It's preordained, but in a way that We, of course, have free will. We choose to be reactive or non reactive. We choose to be proactive or just sit on our butts. And because of that, we get different timelines and we keep either elevating or lowering the level of timeline that we're gifted with. But yeah, like we were preordained, predetermined to have wandered to that part of the neighborhood where the this cat's body was. I never go there
Hmm.
ever. Like that's 99 times out of 100, I will go the other direction. And this time we turned right instead of left.
That's such a powerful example of intuition, you know? So, and I sort of make a distinction between intuition and psychic. And intuition is something definitely everybody has. And that's the feeling we have in our bodies. If we're really tuned into our bodies, we get it there. It's our emotions. So, our emotional states, and also I just have a feeling like, I have a good feeling or bad feeling, and then the sense of knowing, so if you know anything about chakras, it's the first three chakras, that makes up, and that's our intuition. And intuition is our inner knowing, our the wisdom of ourself, the wisdom of our higher self that guides us. And it's a little bit like the rudder on a ship. Or you remember that game we used to play when we were kids, hot and cold?
Hmm.
Like you go towards something and you're hot, warm, warm, hot, hot.
Yep.
Like it's that kind of guidance system that comes from our our own wisdom. And we all have incredible inner wisdom, intense inner wisdom. And then psychic is really the ability to receive information from outside our own system. So when you talk about angel, you have an angel connection. So angel numbers, we all have we all have a team really of spiritual non-physical beings that are helping us, that are spirit guides. And our teams can vary with time, and they might be anything from dead relatives or pets that come back and assist us, to beings like angels, which aren't human, never were, but they're super helpful. So we all have this team, and you're on your team, you have angels. So and I know that sometimes what happens for you is that you open your mouth and the angel says something through you, and you might be like, whoa, I said something extra cool. Like that was extra cool, or that was extra poignant. Or I bet people will tell you, oh my gosh, you were an angel to me, for me today. That you have a super strong connection with them. That's why they speak through the numbers,
Yeah,
through
that's
angel cards.
and that happens with others, and receiving messages from the other side of the veil for us too. Like I had saved that cat in Israel, and the next morning I'm on a podcast as a guest, and the woman who interviews me, I mentioned what had happened because it was very fresh, and I had taken the cat to the vet, and she was recuperating, and so forth. And this interviewer, really cool lady, told me, you know what my mother always said is, you save a stray cat and you get a few extra years added to your life. And that just gave me
Wow.
goosebumps, like angel bumps, right? Because I knew that wasn't random. That was
Right.
the message from the other side for me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of my things too, is that people will say things to me, and that's how I receive a lot. Like I really, really pay attention. If three people tell me the same thing, I
Mm.
really listen. That's one for me.
Yeah.
I know is one of my
Yeah, that
signals.
reminds me of the three people who told me just quote unquote randomly in 2009, Stephan, you need to go to this Tony Robbins event. You really need it. And it was within a short time span, those three different people, and changed my life. It started me down a path of personal development. I was going through a dark time, going through a divorce, and yeah, it really empowered me. I was still agnostic at that point in my life up until age 42, but because of the Tony Robbins seminars that I went to, I did get a spiritual awakening in 2012 in India on
Mhm.
one of his platinum partner trips. A monk touched me on the head, gave me a Diksha oneness blessing, and it
Right.
zapped me. It's like a psychedelic trip, and
Cool.
yeah, it's just all these things are so, it's like they're written. They're already written for us. This chance meeting that you're going to have with somebody, it's a soul contract. Like this person's going to be your soulmate, and you're going to miss the bus or the train or whatever, and you're going to meet this person because you, for one out of 1,000 times, you happen to miss that train.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Do you?
feel like for me that gives me a lot of faith, you know what I mean? And I still believe in the power of our choice. Like we still have to show up and choose, but
Right.
I always feel comfort when I kind of can step back and see that called the pattern, the grand pattern of our lives and the our individual lives, but also the kind of unfolding of the universe, and even when I can't see, like it's hard to fathom right now why we're going through all the things that we're going through and the pain and suffering and the chaos of the past couple of years. But I have faith that it's part of a unfoldment of the universe that will take us to a greater, an upgrade. I think it's part of the upgrade that
Oh
we're
yeah,
getting.
for sure.
So,
It's part of the upgrade. Yeah. Like one thing I was guided to that really gave me a lot of reassurance in that regard was a cryon channeling from. So it was cryon being channeled through Lee Carroll,
mm,
and it was a parable about a fish tank with some fish in it, and how the fish tank was under construction. Now I don't want to give the whole spoiler here of the story, but I'll include a link to that recording, that YouTube video in the show notes, so that if you're curious, you can listen to it. But it's really inspiring and puts things into perspective. This is not all doom and gloom. It's not the end of the world. It's not like apocalypse is such a loaded term. Well, apocalypsis in Greek means thinning of the
on,
veils.
or like revelation, it's the things to be revealed. So I think that that's another way to think about it. What's being revealed inside of us and in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's switch topics for a little bit. I'd love to hear a few more things about this ability, a set of abilities that you have, and how our listener can learn some discernment and some skills in these areas based on what they hear from you. For example, I would love for you to differentiate for our listener Reiki versus psychic Reiki, because I know your book, the number one bestseller, The Art of Psychic Reiki, is different from just the art of Reiki. So
Mm.
what's the difference?
Sure. So the difference is that because I was teaching Reiki for the past 22 years and teaching psychic development sort of alongside that, what I noticed was that people who take Reiki, if you have latent psychic ability, it pops open, just like yoga and meditation do too. So a lot of people were, and it made sense to me that that would be true because I noticed my students tend to be empaths, people who feel called towards doing healing work. And if you're a Reiki practitioner, having intuition and psychic ability is a great asset to your life as a healer, to your work. You're going to be able to add, a set of skills, and it's really useful. Clients really like it. It's a fabulous tool to have in our toolkit as healers, right? So it makes sense to me that they go together like that. And one day I was teaching Reiki and this student came to me and she said, I took Reiki like 5 years ago, but I stepped away from it because after I went through my attunement, I had this massive psychic opening and it scared me. I started having like ghosts walk through my house and I was seeing things about people and I was seeing colors around people. And she told me that her Reiki teacher at the time had no idea what to tell her. Her Reiki teacher she was working with was like, well, just cut that out. Like it's weird and creepy and stop doing it. And I have nothing to say about it. and and so she was like, okay. So she just stepped away from everything. She kind of shut herself back down. And I thought that
Which
was
is a
really
real shame,
sad.
by the way, because
Right? Isn't it sad?
it
You know?
is such an incredible gift to
Right?
have. And I remember when I interviewed Eric Lures on the show, he at the time he wasn't really out there saying that he was psychic, but he had abilities from his early childhood, and he was seeing these scary looking ghost balloons and stuff like coming to his window, and it was freaked him out, and he just shut the door. Like,
It
I'm
happens to
done
a
with
lot of
that.
people.
And he didn't have any psychic abilities show up in his life until his adulthood. Then he decided he was going to start dabbling in that again.
Yeah, I mean that's such a common story, both sides of that. So people who have psychic abilities as children got freaked out and shut it down, or their parents get freaked out and make them shut it down, and then they something will happen that sort of opens them. They take some steps in their spiritual growth and development, and their skills pop open. So it was that moment where I was like, that's not right. Like, she, she needs help. Like, I can help her learn to manage her psychic. She just needs to be taught. She just needs to know what to do with her psychic ability, what it's all about, how to manage her energy, because that was hard for her too. And then she went on to, she's an incredible healer in her own. She wrote a book. She has a healing center. Like, she's impact. One of the things I love about the work I do is the ripple effect that it has in the world. So my goal is to train an army of healers to go out there and save the planet, and it needs saving right about now. So, you know, so any time I can train somebody in Reiki or they're psychic and they go out, I love to watch what they do, how they help, and how that ripples out into the world. That's like what gets me out of bed in the morning, pretty much. So that's kind of how it came about. So to answer your question, psychic Reiki is just Reiki that for people that have psychic ability, and it's the training that you need if you have psychic ability and you're doing hands-on energy healing.
Okay.
And to me, it's peanut butter and jelly, but it goes together like that. And it's hard to get because not a lot of Reiki practitioners or teachers teach the two together.
Mm, yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier that you're more of a visual psychic, so you'll see things. Have you seen things since you were really young? And how did you further develop this so that you could see people's auras or different kinds of entities or beings? Like, what kind of tell us a bit more about that?
For the most part, like, thanks, it's a great question. For the most part, visual psychics are so my psychic development classes are divided into two groups of people, and they're the visual psychics that are just trying to figure out how to turn it off, and they're in the corner going, "Make it stop, make it stop, make it stop," you know. And then there are the other psychics with the other skills, and they're more looking to turn it on, like that. And so for me, it was never a matter of turning it on. I spent the first 20 years of my life trying to figure out how to turn it off, and not be overwhelmed, because it's a tricky one. The visual psychic, people think they want it. It's the most rare. It's the most unpredictable, unreliable, difficult. If you don't have it, you're a bit better off, honestly. And a lot of times, because of what we see in the media, we think we're not psychic unless we see things. Well, I didn't see anything. People told me that all the time. And what I do is I ask them to change their word to perceive or experience. So I'll do a guided meditation, like a meet your guides meditation, and people go, "I didn't see anything," and I'm like, "Well, what did you perceive? What did you experience?" And those words open us up to the other psychic senses, and all of a sudden they heard this and they felt this and they knew this, and they um, they have a lot, um, and that's good. So I don't know. I think for me, the difficulty was in figuring out what I was seeing, what it meant. Like, I was 6 years old, so from the beginning, from my very, very, very first memory is a weird psychic experience of being in my crib, being in my cradle, and having all these luminous beings standing around me, smiling and waving and blowing kisses. It was so amazing. And then my mother opened the door and walked into the room and walked through them, and they all disappeared. That's my very first memory.
Wow.
So, yeah, when I was 6 years old, my parents were driving down a highway, and the traffic was stopped because there was an accident. And we drove past it, and there were two people lying on the side of the road. Sad thing. And there were paramedics, and one of them was leaning over this person, and there was this huge white being that was there, and it was an angel. And I was like, I said to my parents, that one's going to get better. You know, that one's, and then the other one had the same kind of being, but it was a black being. It was like a black angel. And I was like, that one's going to die,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it wasn't a dark spirit. It was like a death angel, really, that
Yeah,
was coming
angel
to
of death.
lift up the spirit. That was, when I was 3 and my sister was born, my dad took me to, look in the window at all the little the baby bassinets, and I could see angels and spirits and all kinds of things flying all around. I
Mm.
remember asking my dad what they were, and he was like, he was like, I had a lot of imaginary friends, and I had, oh, you have such an imagination, So I think for me, it was trying to figure out what I was seeing when nobody else could see it.
Mm.
That was a trick. That was
Yeah,
tricky.
yeah. And you said also earlier that you see the chords, energetic chords, and do you just see them whether people ask you to look or not? You just see like people walking down the street with cords and entities glommed onto them and so forth, or do they have to give
Yeah.
you permission and then you can see the stuff?
Well, like I said, I try really hard to not. So I button myself up pretty good before I go out in public. And if I'm on my game, I don't see things because I'm kind of like, I'm in the supermarket and I'm just here to buy vegetables. You know, like I'm just, and I have to do that. And then I don't see it. And if I'm not on my game, then it's a little tired or not feeling good or whatever. Then it's a little harder for me. Or if I'm super relaxed,
Mm.
that's the other place where I can kind of slip it, and then I see stuff. I've learned that it's a lot like where I choose to shift my attention. So let's say you and I were sitting at a bar, right, talking, and there was a TV playing behind your head. And that had all your past lives on it, and your medical stuff, and your relationship stuff, and your future, your like all your family connect, like whole thing. And I could choose to look at you and ignore that, right? Because it's like an act of will of where you put your attention.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And just like you can choose to not look at a TV that's behind someone's head,
right.
you know?
That
So
makes sense.
so I'm like, okay, we're talking in the here and now. Like I'm gonna get you as a person right now and not go there. And I've really I have a real strong desire to teach ethics on this issue actually, because I feel like we have ethical obligations as psychics to not share. My policy is if you don't ask, I don't tell.
Okay.
I
Well, do
would
you
have
see any
no
beings
friends.
around me right now?
I would have zero friends if I just did everything. You got a whole bunch. Like there's a whole choir of angels behind you. At I don't know, 20
Oh wow.
like high level beings, and you have so many because you came here to play a big game. And you are you know um, have a big impact in the world, and they came to assist you because it would be very hard to do what you came here to do by yourself. And I feel like there's a contract between you and these beings to be like the forefront of this energy movement, that to a bringer of light, they're saying, and that's why it's angels, to bring light on and raise consciousness. And they came to help you. They wouldn't send you here by yourself with such a big mission.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, you get a lot of spiritual backup. And then there's like probably one being around you, that's at least one that stands um, on that side, your left side, is a man. He feels sort of more like in the ascended master. He would be like your spiritual director. And he talks into your ear, so you hear him like a voice in your head. And he's more about your personal spiritual developments. So he would have been the one that asked the people to tell you about Tony Robbins, or have you missed that train so you could meet your soulmate. Like he's the one that cares about you as you, not just as a servant to humanity, but your personal, growth. And he's one of the ascended masters.
Mm.
Very kind, very like Saint Germain, possibly. That's kind of what he feels like to me. And he says he's worked with you before through many lifetimes.
Wow.
Kind of
Yeah,
bring like peace and compassion and love to the world.
Saint Germain carries the violet flame.
Yeah.
Took it on from Kuan Yin,
Yeah,
which
that's the
is
one.
releasing of karma.
Yeah, he's with you a lot. He's super compassionate for the pain and suffering we have as humans, you know? So very loving, very gentle.
Wow. Thank you so much. I know we're out of
You're so
time.
welcome.
This was fabulous, amazing, phenomenal, powerful, and inspiring. And so, if our listener viewer wants to work with you, wants to read your books, wants to get readings, take your courses, all that sort of stuff, where should we send him or her to?
My website, lisacampion.com, will be there. I teach online Reiki classes and psychic development classes of all different kinds. And I have a little gift for your people, for people who are listening, to help them learn to manage their energy. It's managing your sensitivity for empaths. Um, and I'd love it's a really good class, 4-hour video class of how to set boundaries, how to ground yourself and clear yourself, just basic energy hygiene that we need as sensitives. Now more than ever we need it. So I just love to give that to anyone who wants it.
That's
And
awesome, and I'm gonna
yeah.
watch that myself because
Oh, good.
I need that.
It would do you some good. It would, you know.
Yeah.
I just feel like you have great things. I get a little bit of a party message for you that kind of like look out, because the next couple of years is going to take you into this spirituality in such a deep level, and that there's a lot of um, impact you're going to have in helping people make that shift in their own lives. So your own spiritual world and life is going to deepen, and then you're going to share that in really beautiful ways. So I can't wait to see what you're going to do next.
Wow. Thank you. That's such a gift. Such a gift. Thank you for sharing that. So the free gift for our listener or viewer is at just lisacampion.com, or where should they
Yep.
go for that?
If you go there and you go like right halfway down my website, there's a big old box that says click here to get your free gift,
Okay.
and they can get it.
All right. And we'll
Yeah.
also put the direct link in the show notes too. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you, listener, for your rapt attention and for wanting to do good in the world. You wouldn't be listening if that weren't the case. So thank you. Be a light in the world, and we'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.